welcome to the course Intercultural Communication. In this level and in this first class, we will talk about culture. And as we talk about culture, we will define culture, we will describe the levels of culture, the layers of culture, we'll talk about the tree of culture, visibles and invisibles, cultural universals and dimensions of human behavior. Every time when we talk about culture, we will be getting back to this map. So in this map, we can see that culture has its functions because culture, it is how humans adapt to the environment and create social cultural groups. We can also see that culture is described from different perspectives. There are different levels of culture and it is visible and invisible. We can talk about the tree of culture or the cultural iceberg. So culture defines dimensions of human behavior, and also culture is structured in layers. There is the whole body of culture, the subculture, the subgroup, and individual culture. So let's start with the definition of culture. You remember that there are very many different definitions. So definitions of culture can be divided into historical. Culture is viewed as a social heritage. Behavioral, culture is the way of life. Normative, culture is equated with the ideas, values, and rules. And functional, culture means the way humans solve problems and adapt to their environment. So if we look here, we'll see that culture is our history, our behavior, our norms, ideas, values. It has functions because we adapt to the environment, and it is structured mentally and also in various symbols. So culture, again, is mental constructs and it has symbolic interpretation. So again, we look at this map and it is easy to see what culture is. So recently, culture is shown as a social process that takes into account moral, social, and political consequences. Very often, we see culture as something that helps humans to adapt to natural environment and social cultural environments. There are many functions of culture. Culture can identify the meaning. Culture is our group inclusion. Culture creates boundaries between groups. Also, culture has the ecological adaptation function. It has the function of communication, and it provides a highly selective screen between a human and an outside world. In its many forms, culture is what we pay attention to and what we ignore. So, also, culture has visible and invisible aspects. If you look at the very common metaphor of culture, we'll see that culture is viewed as an iceberg. There are parts that are easy to see, and there are parts that are very difficult to see. For example, language is easy to see, but or dress, food is what we easily see. But what is the expectation of a person who is wearing this dress? What is the attitude? What the values of this person are? It is very difficult to see. Another metaphor that we will be talking about, and it is also connected with visible and invisible parts of culture, is the tree of culture. The tree of culture shows different levels of culture. It is the elements that we can see, food, music, dress, and holidays, its surface, unspoken rules and social norms, such as nonverbal communication, eye contact, and personal space. It is the shallow, it's lower, and as we already said, core beliefs, group values, archetypes, mental models are very deep in our cultural tree, in the tree of culture. So culture has different functions. The functions of the culture are, first of all, is identity. Culture shows who you are. When we ask who we are, we often, especially now, define ourselves as Ukrainians. Also, group inclusion function. It is who or what group we belong to and who is in this group. Then intergroup boundary, what the boundaries of the group are. Then ecological adaptation, how we adapt to the environment, cultural communication, and finally, culture is a highly selective screen between a human and an outside world. So again, if we look at this map, we'll see that culture has visible and invisible aspects. We can compare here iceberg to tree of culture. So something that we can see and something that we can't see. And also culture has different functions. The functions of culture are identity meaning, group inclusion, interboundary regulation, ecological adaptation, communication, and screening. So culture says who we are, how we group, who are the members of our group, and how we communicate and how we see the rest of the world. So the nature of culture. Culture is usually acquired through the people, and cultural norms are our values, our attitudes, and they influence our behavior. Of course, not everyone in a culture has exactly the same values. Now we come to the very important moment of culture. It is the culture itself, the subculture, and the subgroup culture and the individual culture. So it shows us that the culture is not the same for all people living, for example, in Ukraine or in the United States, because we can belong to a culture. Culture is what distinguishes our specific society. It gives people shared beliefs, customs, and values. We learn this culture from our family, education, peer, and media, and culture usually exists within a country. Subculture is your ethnic belonging, your class, your religion, so something that is smaller than a culture. Every culture can have many subcultures inside it. A subculture offers a unique identity, and it is a shared way of living. Usually people join a subculture by adopting its values, beliefs, and behaviors. Subculture exists within the broader culture. So again, there is big, let's say, American culture, and inside there are many ethnic groups, many religious groups, and the same is in any country of the world. So the subgroup is the group you belong to. Very often it's your, for example, occupation. As a student, you belong to the group of students, or as a teacher, you belong to the group of teachers. Yeah? So your occupation shows your subgroup, and the subgroup can also be like the group of music fans you belong to, or just many subgroups. It is it's a smaller unit. It gives your identity, and it is acquired from the people who have common characteristics, hobbies, professions, and so on. Subgroups usually exist within broader groups, so that is where people have their own interests. Yeah. So, okay, these are the tasks. And now we are here again. We see that culture has different layers. These layers are body of culture, like whole culture. So then subculture, the culture you belong to, subgroup, and individual culture. And now from this map, you see that we haven't discussed dimensions of human behavior, which may be universal, cultural, and personal. So let's start with what is called cultural universals. So cultural universals, they describe why cultures differ in different times and places, but still they are the same for many people all over the world, for all people. For example, place, time, and physical description, and this is a universal, that we all usually live in a certain place at a certain time and have certain physical description. There is family, we have families, and humans live in families. There is economics, and in each economy, the labor is divided in a specific way. We all need food, clothing, shelter, and transportation, and our communication is also communication is also made of two aspects. It is verbal and non-verbal. So other cultural universals are political organization, art and recreation, values and beliefs, and education. If we look at the human behavior, we'll see that behavior may be universal, cultural, and personal. So universal, we all need food, we all speak a language, and so on. So cultural, yeah? So Americans often are English monolinguals. They don't speak many languages. Or Americans like to eat fast food. It is cultural and personal. So you may, as American, you may speak 2 or 3 languages. And the personal is that you may be a vegetarian and not like hamburgers and fast food. If we look at the universal, cultural, and personal in every of us, we'll see that these universal moments, they are inherited, they are common to human nature. For example, we need to eat, yeah? So, and we all need nutritious food. Cultural, we learn what food we like to eat, and individual characteristics, they are what you actually like to eat as a person. So again, now we are back to the map, and we can characterize our culture from the point of view of behavior and dimensions. Universal behavior, it is for every person. Like when we see a dangerous animal, everyone will not hug the animal, but run away from it. Cultural is how your culture shaped you. And personal is what your individual culture is about. So here you see, if we connect layers of culture to dimensions of human behavior, we'll see that layers define the dimensions. Universal are specific to every person. Cultural norms depend on our culture, subculture, and subgroup, and personal is our individual culture. So let's sum up. Today, we talked about what culture is. Culture actually is how humans adapt to natural environment and what social cultural environments they create. There are many functions of culture. Culture shows who we are, what group we belong to, what are the boundaries, how we adapt to the environment, how we communicate, what we like and what we don't like. Today, by this day, there are very many definitions of culture. So culture is defined from historical point of view, behavioral norms, functions. It is a mental construct and it is about structures and symbols. Culture is actually what we can see and what we can't see. And we have here two big metaphors. It is cultural iceberg. The part is easier to see. The smaller part, but the bigger part is more difficult to see. And levels of culture, or the tree of culture. There are the elements that we can see, the elements that are unspoken, but still we can recognize. And there are very deep elements that are actually the values, and people don't talk about them often. So every culture has the universal part, the cultural part, and the personal part, and it is defined by the layers of culture. So there is the body of culture, whole culture, the subculture, and the subgroup and individual culture. So if you need to think of your own culture and the culture that you're going to communicate with, you need to remember that there is the big culture, there is the subgroup culture, and there is the individual culture of a group. So that's all for today. Thank you for your attention. Bye-bye.